Hi, my name is Kristin. This is Kristin Kraves Books. So I have read 8 books since the last time I did a recent reads update, and it was a bit of a mixed bag for me. I think like last time, May just seemed like a weird reading month. I read 15 books in May, almost 5,000 pages, but my average rating was a little bit lower than it normally is. And I think that's just the nature of reading arcs, and then just some things don't work for me as much as I expect them to, especially when it comes to thrillers and romances. I either love them or they just don't work, and I read quite a few of those this month. But I have 4 of them here physically, and then the other 4 I either read an ebook of or listened to the audiobook. So the first one that I read physically was Bitter by Akwaeke Emezi, and this was a hit for me. This is the prequel to Pet, which was Akwaeke Emezi's first YA novel, but I love everything that they write. I say this all the time. But I adore prequels, and that was definitely the case for this one. Bitter is Jam's mom from the first book, so we are following Bitter's childhood when she is kind of in this school that is almost an orphanage, and it takes in people who have talent in the arts, and Bitter is an artist, as you can probably tell by this cover. And there's a lot of themes about the power of art, which is a theme that I love. And they live in this town called Lucille, where there's a bit of an uprising, a revolution happening, and Bitter is fighting with her feelings about that. She is so scared, and she's so concerned for her safety that she wants to get involved, but she also doesn't. She is very torn because all of her friends are really involved with it, but they are respecting her boundaries. Nobody is forcing her, but it's all internal that she feels like she's not doing enough. And then she kind of gets wrapped into all of this. There are monsters in here. The ending was a bit rushed. It is a short book, but I think for the intended audience that this is a really, really powerful book, that any teen should be reading this. There is a lot of conversation about really coming into your own, what you want to stand up for, and really a focus on creativity. So I thought this was absolutely fantastic. I think you can read this as a standalone. I go back and forth on whether I prefer this one or Pet. They're very different because in Pet there are no monsters, or so they think, and then maybe one is there. This one is full of monsters, and it is interesting. There's quite an epic battle scene at the end. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. Highly recommend it, especially if you're looking to get into Akwaeke Emezi's work. I do think that Pet and Bitter are a good place to start, and I actually think that reading Bitter first is probably a good idea. I then read the 4th book in the Memoirs of Lady Trent series. I say this every month, but I am co-hosting a read-along of this entire series, and this one's in the Labyrinth of Drakes. And if you have been keeping up with my videos, you will know I have mixed feelings about this series. I really enjoyed the first one because I thought it was interesting, and the memoir style of this was new to me, and I was really compelled by that one. The second one was just okay. I like the setting of the second one, but the ending was ridiculous, and it was not one that stayed with me. The third ones I had some pretty serious issues with, but I'm happy to report that this one is my favorite in the series so far. We haven't done our live show yet, and I don't think we've confirmed a date, but I'm thinking it is probably on the 12th of June, and once I know the exact date and time, I will put all that information below for you. But this was everything that I've been looking for in this series. It is more of an adventure story. There is, I don't want to say too much because it's such a spoiler. There's so many spoilers. There's more dragons in here. I liked the desert setting probably the most because each of the books is set in something completely different weathers. One's on the sea, one's more in tropical areas. So this one's in the desert, and I really appreciated that. I feel like Lady Trent as a character has a lot more growth in here. I really liked the ending, and a lot of the side characters that I loved in the first one have more time in this book as well. So yeah, this one just worked for me. I didn't have the issues that I had with the third one in here, so I'm really excited to talk about this with everybody else that is reading along with us to see what everybody else thought of this. But this was a really strong book in the series, and we only have 1 book left, and I'm curious to see where all of this is going. So I am just quite pleased that I'm making my way through the series, and that this one is better than I expected. I've decided that 2022 is the year that I embrace my love for cozy mysteries, so I read Daisies for Innocence by Bailey Cottrell, and this is the first book in the Enchanted Garden series, and I plan to read the second one this month because these are so great. They're a good palate cleanser. They follow the typical storyline of a murder mystery, and usually in the first book of a murder mystery, your main character is a suspect, and that was the case in this one. And actually the person who was murdered is her ex-husband's new girlfriend, who also works for our main character. And the day that our main character finds out she's dating her ex is the day this woman dies. So it's very suspect. She also finds her dead in the enchanted garden in her backyard. So she's the obvious suspect, and she decides to try and find the real killer. There's a bit of a romance building up in here, which you often find in cozy mysteries, but this one has a sprinkle of magic. Our main character owns a perfume store, and she has this knack that is almost magical for being able to determine the perfect scent that somebody needs at that moment. And we get some scenes of that, and I just love that. And of course, with any cozy, you get good descriptions, especially food descriptions. And if you know me, you know I love a good food description, so I just love cozies. And this one's a great bonus. Normally there's a cat in a cozy mystery, which you know I love. I am such a cat person. But this one has a cat and a corgi, so I just love that. And I often find that the first book in a cozy mystery is the weakest because you're doing the setup and you're getting the world together, and it's just a glimpse of the romance and all that. So I have high hopes for the rest of the books in the series, and so far it's just a trilogy, which is fantastic because I can't commit to long series, and cozy mystery series are often between like 12 and 20 books. So I'm excited that I can probably keep up with this one, and it's short. I like the size of this. The covers are gorgeous, so I was really happy with that one. And then I finally read If We Were Villains by ML Rio, and yeah, I get it. This deserves the hype. I understand it. I forgot how much I love dark academia. I am here for morally gray, pretentious, unlikable characters. I don't know why I like that, only in a dark academia setting. So that just works for me. There's a lot of Shakespeare references in this book, and it is a bit much, but it really just sets you up to know what kind of characters these people are, and they are so pretentious. I loved it. And it's actually told in different acts instead of parts, which I appreciated. And we are following a group of friends who are at like a special school for theater kids, and the only plays they put on are Shakespeare plays. And I think they're in their senior year, and it's very difficult to get to your senior year at this school. So we're following this group of characters, and you know from the beginning that somebody has been murdered, and that our main character Oliver has been in prison for this murder. And it opens up with the original detective on that case coming to visit Oliver as he's getting out of prison because he's been bugging him. He wants to know what really happened. So this is Oliver telling the story, and things are secretly revealed. And every act opens up with Oliver in the present talking to the detective. And I really liked those parts because you get little glimmers of the past and who he is now. I really liked that. And that is pretty much all you need to know because there's so many reveals. But my favorite thing about this was the ending, and I know that the ending is so divisive, and that is what I love. I love books that create conversations. I found myself on Reddit. There are so many Reddit threads about the ending of this book and people's different thoughts and feelings and theories, and I just fell down that rabbit hole, and I love books that do that. And I thought the ending was quite genius, so this worked for me. If you liked The Secret History, I think you'll love this because it's very similar. I do think I liked The Secret History more, but I have a feeling that's just because I read that first. If I read this one first, I probably would have liked it more. They're just very similar themes, and I can't believe this is ML Rio's only book. I hope that they are writing something else because I thought that this was really good, exactly what I needed. And now I don't want to fall down a dark academia rabbit hole again, so I'm trying not to, but we will see because I forgot how much I loved it. So that is it for physical books, but then I listened to A Lady for a Duke on audio. I had an ALC from Libre FM, and this is by Alexis Hall, who's quickly becoming one of my favorite romance authors of all time. He wrote Boyfriend Material, the sequel to that comes out this year. He wrote Rosalind Palmer Takes a Cake, which I love this year, so I have a feeling I will read a lot more of his work this year, and he might be one of my most read authors of the year, which I can't complain about. He has a special way of tackling some more serious topics, but there's also a lot of humor. And this is actually historical romance. I've never read a historical romance before. This was my first. It won't be my last. I loved this. And it is a friends to lover story. And it's following a duke who believes that his best friend has died at the Battle of Windsor. and he is suffering with PTSD at this point. He is disabled. He has an injury, a leg injury from the battle, and he is suffering with alcoholism and opioid addiction at this point. And Viola was injured during the battle, but was rescued and given the opportunity to live the life that she wants to live, and she never thought that she would see the Duke again, whose name is Justin, but she hears that he is suffering, and she ends up going to see him. And Viola is a trans woman, and the Duke doesn't recognize her at first, and they instantly have a connection, and he starts to open up to her, especially about the loss of his best friend. And then romantic feelings come into play, and Viola opens up about who she is, and it's just so beautifully done. And there's some great side characters as well that add some humor. And my only issue with this is there was some pacing issues. I don't think this needed to be 450 pages. The third act conflict was a little bit convoluted to me. I think they just needed to add some drama to the story, but I don't think it was needed. I was just happy with the sweet romance between these two, and the Friends to Lovers is one of my favorite Friends to Lovers books that I have ever read. And if you have any historical romance recommendations, would you let me know, because there's so much out there and I don't know where to begin, so I would love some help with that. So that was a really good one. I then listened to an ALC of My Mechanical Romance by Lexine Farrell Falmouth, who, her pen name is Olivia Blake. So she wrote The Atlas Six, which I have but have not read. So I thought that was really interesting. I didn't know that when I first started this book. And this is her first YA contemporary romance, and I thought it was so sweet and well done and adorable. And especially if you yourself are a young girl who wants to get into STEM, or you know a young girl who's looking to get into STEM, please read this or put this in their hand. It is perfect for that. I think that this author does a really good job of finding a balance between more serious conversations about women in STEM and the way that they're treated, family issues like divorce, being a child of divorce, the stress of applying for colleges, while also having a sweet romance at the center of it. And we are following this young girl who nobody's really believed in her at school. She's always been smart, but she's never been inspired or uplifted, and she had one teacher who believed in her and encourages her to sign up for a club and apply to colleges. So she ends up signing up for this robotics club and finds out that she really has a passion for it, and she's great at it. And she has a bit of a hate to love romance with the main guy of this robotics club, and he can be a bit abrasive at times and takes a bit to warm up to her, and he always doesn't always do the right thing or say the right thing, but the romance is really, really beautiful. It had me Googling robotics competitions on YouTube. I was watching so many robotic competition videos, and I'm not science minded at all or interested in robots that much, but this was fascinating to me. I absolutely loved the ending, so this was just great, and I think it's going to be really empowering for young girls. I will read anything that this author writes. I hope that she's working on another YA. I know she has a few adult books coming out, and it made me more excited to read The Atlas Six, which I was just kind of neutral about before, so that is fantastic. I then listened to an ALC of The Woman in the Library by Slari Gentle, and I've talked about this one a few times. It was in my most anticipated books of June, and I described the synopsis to you, but the synopsis is so misleading and incorrect, and I think that the publisher probably does it on purpose. All they tell you is that it's about these four people who do not know each other and are bonding and having a conversation in the reading room at the Boston Public Library, and then somebody is murdered and the security guard comes and traps them in there, which is really not what this is about. That's like the first few pages, and then they're not in the library anymore, so most of this is not set in the Boston Public Library at all. So don't think you're getting a locked room mystery, because that's what I thought we were getting. And this is actually a story within a story. So the story of these people in the Boston Public Library and trying to find the murderer of this woman is actually a novel that is being written by an author who we never meet. But the author is receiving letters from like a fact checker for her, because the author was supposed to go to Boston. She's Australian, and the main character in the book that she is reading is Australian, but this book is set in Boston, so the author was going to go to Boston to fact check her book and get familiar with the locations and the language and all that stuff. But then the pandemic happened and she wasn't able to make it. So she has this person doing research for her. So she's sending this person her manuscript. The person's giving her some tips and some language ideas and things like that. So that is really the story, and I can't tell you any more than that. It goes to some interesting places. It's a little bit convoluted, but I think it's important to know what to expect because I was so disoriented when I was reading it. Not at all what I was expecting or what the synopsis led me to believe this was about, but the story within a story element was really unique, and I thought it was interesting. So yeah, I don't know, the actual novel part that she was writing, a little bit convoluted, a little bit predictable, but the whole concept around everything I thought was quite genius. So I enjoyed it and I'm glad that I read it. And then the last one is an e-arc that I read, and that is American Royalty by Tracy Livesay. And I have mixed feelings about this. This is loosely based on Prince Harry and Meghan, but I would say very loosely based on them. So my favorite character was definitely Dani. She is a rapper, but she also has a skincare line that she's very passionate about, and she's looking to sell her skincare line, and that's really where her passion lies. And I love romances around celebrities, especially when we talk about how the media can affect a person, and that was definitely a theme in here that I appreciated. But the romance itself just didn't work for me. These characters do not meet until 30% in. I did not care about this prince at all. I thought it was interesting that he wanted to be out of the limelight. He was a professor. I loved all that. But this is definitely like a lust at first sight kind of story. He sees a picture of Dani and like is lusting after her, talking about how good she looks, and she ends up doing a concert for the royal family. They're doing like a charity event to try and help their reputation because their reputation is not great at this time, and the only person that really people are liking, the public like, is this prince. So he doesn't know anything about pop culture or who's famous right now or what the kids are into. So he just throws out her name somehow, you'll see in the story, and she ends up going to England to do this concert because it'll also help her reputation, because there's some stuff on social media that is kind of affecting her career and she doesn't want it to affect her skincare line. Anyways, so they meet. They do not get off to a good start. He's quite mean to her, do not like it, but he's thinking about her body. She's thinking about how hot he is. Then it gets a little steamy. Didn't love the steamy scenes as much, but they do have good sexual chemistry, but their emotional chemistry was lacking to me. They didn't have a lot of deep conversations. This was not love at first sight, it was lust at first sight. And the whole thing, their whole relationship, it takes place over the course of 2 weeks, and I thought that was too fast. And I just don't see how this relationship would work in the real world. So I don't know, like, I liked the writing. I really loved everything about Dani's storyline. I just kind of wished it wasn't a romance. I would have just liked to have like a contemporary story about Dani, her career, the issues that she faces. I thought that would have been more interesting. So maybe having the prince in the background, I just didn't need his perspective. And normally I like having dual perspective in romances, but he just was not it for me. And the royal family drama was interesting, maybe a bit too far, but it was compelling to read about. The epilogue was kind of silly. I don't know, this doesn't come out until the end of the month, and I'm curious to see what other people think. And there were things I liked about it, things I didn't, but I am glad that I read it. And yeah, I'm curious to read more by this author, and I'm curious to see what everybody thinks of this romance. So those were the 8 books that I read in the last little bit. I am currently reading, what is it called? It's really good too, and I'm reading, listening to an ALC of it. Let me pull it up. It is called Deep in Providence by Rhys M. Nielsen, and this is a YA contemporary, and it's sapphic, and our main characters are witches. There's magic. One of the best friends has passed away, and they're trying to bring her back from the dead, and it's really well written. I'm also about to start the romance recipe physically, but my birthday was yesterday, so I just haven't. It's only June 2nd, but I didn't do any reading yesterday, so I gotta get on that because I'm doing 2 readathons this month. So hopefully we'll see another one of these videos soon. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for your support as always. I will talk to you again soon. Bye for now.